Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is a Samsung Series 5 Chromebook, which is the 2012 model of the Samsung's computer that's basically designed to run Google Chrome OS. It's a web browser-based operating system. This is the second time Samsung's released a model that basically runs nothing but the Chrome web browser. The first was a model that came out in 2011, and it had an Intel Atom processor and 2 gigabytes of RAM, and it really started to feel pretty sluggish. Even though it was only really running one app, once you ran multiple browser tabs, once you had 4 or 5 tabs open at the same time, it started to feel really slow. This new model has a Celeron processor, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and feels much faster. I haven't had any sort of slowdown experiences so far. Now again, you're not going to be doing any sort of PC-type tasks like editing videos or playing high-end video games, because everything you're doing here you're basically doing in a web browser. But you do need a fairly decent processor and fair amount of memory in order to have a good web browsing experience these days. So let's take a quick look at what you get with this laptop. This is sent to me by Google and Samsung for purposes of review, and I'll have a full review soon, but I wanted to give you a quick overview. We've got a matte display, which is something that Samsung really excels at. Almost nobody else makes matte displays here. It's a 12.1-inch display, and it's not particularly reflective of glare, which is nice. It doesn't go back very far, and you can see it sort of wobbles a bit, but overall it feels like sturdy plastic on this Chromebook. There's an Ethernet jack with a nice little door here that slides down, lets you have a slim profile but a full-size Ethernet jack, and it actually feels a little sturdier than a lot of Ethernet jack doors that I've experienced in the past. HDMI, one USB port, there's another one on the other side for a total of 2, combination mic and headset jack, and a power jack. On the other side we've got that second USB port, a lock port, and an SD card slot, which actually has a little door that goes in. So you actually just slide the SD card right in there, and you don't have to pull anything out. On the back, this model is a 3G model, which starts at $550, and so it's got a eSIM card slot. There's also a $450 model that is Wi-Fi only, and then we've got a little vent here. On the bottom, we've got a couple more vents and stereo speakers. And you'll notice that there's no access panel. There's no way to upgrade the storage, there's no way to upgrade the RAM. That's really sort of defeats, that's really what this is sort of about. It's a what you buy is what you get kind of model, and it's only got a 16 gigabyte solid state disk. You're not really supposed to be storing a lot of files on it locally anyway. So we're going from off to on here, and in the amount of time that it takes most laptops to resume from sleep, we're basically booting the whole operating system. It's entirely loaded here. The only thing that's going to take a moment is we still have to enter the password. And once that's entered, it boots right up into the operating system very quickly. I didn't get a chance to show you, you've got a chiclet-style keyboard and a touchpad. Fairly large touchpad with a nice texture to it, and it's a click pad, which means you can sort of click down on it. Some things you can access just by tapping, others you might need to click on. And the keys are specifically designed for web browsing, so you've got back keys, refresh keys, that sort of thing, as well as no Windows key, just Control-Alt, and there's no function key that you have to hit to get the brightness or volume controls. They're just sort of the default keys here above the keyboard. Now in terms of the overall experience of using this, you know, a web browser-based operating system isn't necessarily going to be for everybody, but if you find that you spend most of your time in a web browser anyway, or you like the idea of having a small, portable, quick-booting laptop that is specifically going to be used for basic tasks like surfing the web, or running web apps, or watching online video, you know, it's an interesting take. And if you already use the Chrome browser on other devices like an Android laptop or a Windows computer, you can synchronize your apps, extensions, search history, everything between devices. So one of the main differences between this version of Chrome and the version that I tried out last year with the original Samsung Series 5 is that you can do sort of this windowed mode. Even though all the applications are web applications, you've got the desktop, you've got a list of, you know, apps that sort of show up here, and you can, instead of running everything in a full screen, you can run it in half screen or resize the screen any way you like. And one of the reasons I really like that is that if I wanted to, say, open up Google Docs and take notes on something that I'm reading, I can read an article on one side and access documents on the other side. Now in terms of those applications, there's the Chrome Web Store, which is where you find and download applications, and there's more and more of these web apps every day. Some of the apps that we've got here include, say, the New York Times application, which is sort of a nice full-screen app for reading. Music app, which is basically just a link to the Chrome Music and Radio Store. Google Search, Google Reader. Now the File Manager is actually sort of a local browser that you can access here. I don't actually currently have any files on the device, but if you insert the SD card, for instance, and you have files on your SD card that you want to access, you can do that through here. And let's take a quick look at, say, the YouTube app, which is basically just a link to the YouTube website, but it shows us that we can watch high-definition video reasonably well here. So this is a 720 video playing in YouTube. I've had success with 1080p videos as well. And you get decent viewing angles, and again, we're seeing glare here, but the glare is actually from the video that I recorded, not necessarily on the laptop itself. You can sort of see a little light shining across here, but it's not particularly shiny. Netflix video works pretty well too, but I've noticed that you don't have this sort of chromeless full screen view when you're using Netflix. If you want to blow something up to full screen, you basically just still wind up with the browser elements on the top and the bottom. And I've shown you how quickly it boots. It resumes from sleep even more quickly. So let's go ahead and put it to sleep. Open it up, and that's that. As I mentioned, there are a couple events on the bottom, and I just noticed while I'm sitting here in a relatively quiet room that you can hear the fan kick in every now and again when you're doing things like watching videos. But it's a relatively quiet laptop. It's a relatively small and light laptop. But here's the thing. At $450, there are any number of other 11 to 12-inch laptops with similar processors that run Windows. So for example, this is a 3-year-old model. This is an Asus UL20. About the same size, about the same weight, gets around 5 hours of battery life. Paid $580 for it 3 years ago. You can find similar models for the same money or less now. And it runs Windows 7, so I can run the Google Chrome web browser just fine in it. It doesn't boot as quickly, and some areas aren't necessarily going to be as responsive because it doesn't have that Celeron processor, it doesn't have an operating system that's optimized for just the web browser. But if I want to do things besides run a web browser, I can, and it's got a I believe a 250 gigabyte hard drive, so if I want to carry around my entire music collection, I can. Those are the sorts of things that are going to be more difficult to do on a Chromebook. So over the next couple of days as I review the Chromebook, I'm really going to be testing to see sort of how it performs in terms of a general use computer. I do spend most of my time in a web browser on a day-to-day basis, and there are a lot of web apps that really replicate the feel of what you would want from a desktop app. Google's really been going crazy with them lately in terms of Google Music, which is an online music player, Google Docs, which is an online office suite, and so forth. But every now and again you might encounter something that you're used to being able to do with a native app that might be difficult to do. If you're a business or an educational institution where you want to be able to give your employees access to a mobile computer to access specific content on specific websites or run specific web apps, and you don't want to have to worry about configuring each individual computer, all you have to do is have them log in with their user IDs on a Chromebook, and one Chromebook is as good as the next. As soon as you log in with a new one, your settings are downloaded and saved, and you can go online and you can access those applications. So it makes a lot of sense for sort of businesses, libraries, educational institutions. From a user perspective, I'm going to be really curious to see if it's something that I can see myself replacing another type of, say, a Windows or Linux or a Mac laptop with a Chromebook. But again, we'll have more details coming in the next couple of days with the Samsung Series 5 Chromebook. This is Brad Linder with Liliputing.